They told me, some cases don't go in the reports. You're trained to write what you see, to document the facts, leave emotion out of it. But what happens when the facts don't make sense, and your eyes aren't sure what they saw? My name is Daniel Riker, former state trooper, badge 4178, out of Holton, Maine. I worked the northern region, Aroostook County, Penobscot up to the borderlands, the places most folks don't even drive through unless they're lost or looking to disappear. I gave 16 years to the job, and I never believed in anything I couldn't touch, cuff, or call in on the radio. Not until 2004, not until the girl on the road. But I'll get to that. Because before that night, before she flagged me down, I already knew something was off about the woods out here. The quiet wasn't natural. The disappearances didn't follow patterns. And the way even the veteran officers talked about certain towns, certain trails, certain names, they'd go real quiet. Not out of superstition, out of something else, respect or fear. You learn to live with the quiet up here. We don't get the calls other departments get. It's a lot of moose in the road, trespassing in the old paper mill sites, drunk hunters screaming at trees. But every few months, one would come in different. Short call, cut off dispatch, no follow-up report, no photographs, just a folder, a closed case, a shrug from a superior, and that phrase they love to use, misadventure in the woods. I remember the night like it was branded into me. October 19th, late shift. Sky was clear and the wind was sharp enough to bite through the windshield. I was cruising the old logging road between Sherman and the northern tip of Baxter. It's not even a road on most GPS maps, just a cut through that private trucks used for timber hauls. I saw her standing on the shoulder, just beyond the high beams, barefoot, soaked, covered in dry leaves, smears of what looked like blood down her left forearm and cheek. Her eyes were wide and not in panic, more like something had snapped. I hit the brakes, radioed it in. Dispatch, I've got a possible 10:55 female, northeast cut of Route 11. No response, just a hiss of static. I stepped out, hand on the holster, protocol, and asked if she was hurt. She didn't answer, didn't cry, didn't scream. She just looked at me and said, "You're too late. I already died. They just let me out so someone would find me. Now listen, I've dealt with shock victims. I've handled missing persons. This was something else. Her face wasn't blank. It was convinced, like she wasn't guessing, like she remembered something I hadn't seen. I brought her into the cruiser. She didn't flinch at the cold seat, didn't even try to warm herself. She just kept glancing at the trees like something was still out there. And when I asked who they were, she wouldn't answer, just whispered, "They talk different now. It's not like before." We reached the hospital 40 minutes later. No one had reported her missing. No ID, just bruises, blood, and something that made the attending nurse look away like she'd seen too much of something she didn't want to understand. They ran her through the system. No match, not even a partial. No one came forward. Not a single report that matched her face, her voice, her clothes. And a week later, she was gone. Gone. Checked herself out, they said. But the hospital had no record of the discharge. No camera footage. Room empty. Bed made. Like she'd never been there. I tried to dig deeper. Spoke with the on-call nurse again. She told me something she hadn't said in her statement. The second night, the girl was in her room. She woke up to find her standing at the edge of the bed, just staring at her. And she said, "I told him not to come back in." But he did. And now, he's wearing my voice. I went back to that road the next weekend. Alone. My partner said I was wasting time. The forest had no memory, but the forest remembered. I found a patch where all the pine needles had fallen in a perfect circle, no branches overhead, like something had pressed out down from above. The air there was thick, wrong. Dead birds around the perimeter, all facing inward. I sent photos. They were deleted from my phone a day later. All of them. Not corrupted, not lost. Gone. There's more. This was only one case. One out of a box I kept hidden beneath floorboards in a cabin I no longer own. Names scratched out, audio tapes warped, locations that don't show up on maps anymore, if they ever did. But I kept the files. I recorded what the official reports left out, because someone has to tell it. Someone has to warn you. If you're listening to this, and you've been through northern Maine, if you've ever driven through Jackman after midnight and seen lights flicker where no buildings stand, if you've heard voices where there should be none, especially if they sound like someone you lost long ago, turn around, don't answer, and never step off the road when the wind dies. There's more. And if you think this was unsettling, just wait until I tell you about the one that followed me home. Because some cases don't stay closed, and some things never stop watching. We always called it the Dead Lake. Not officially, of course. On the map, it's called Norcross Reservoir, just west of Millinocket, tucked behind a wall of pine so dense it blocks out daylight even at noon. But anyone who'd served long enough on the Hulton side knew it by the nickname. And if you asked why, most of them would tell you the same thing. Nothing ever moves out there. No birds, no bugs, and nothing ever floats back in. Except that one morning. It was late October again, barely a week after I found the girl on the logging road. I was still off duty technically, but I hadn't been sleeping right since then. Kept waking up at 3:17 a.m., always the same time, always to that same dream. The girl outside my window, mouthing something I couldn't hear, and the sound of something wet being dragged across wood. Then I got the call. 911 dispatch at 5:46 a.m. Caller was a fisherman. Voice was shaking. He said a boat was drifting out near the tree line. No one paddling, just moving slow in the fog like it was being pulled by a rope we couldn't see. Looks like there's someone slumped in it, he said. But he ain't moving, and the skin, it don't look right. Like chalk, like he's been dead a while, but there ain't no rot. I took the cruiser out to the access trail. It's rough terrain, worse in fall with all the slick leaves and black ice underfoot. By the time I reached the dock, the fog was so thick I could barely see past the tree line. Then I saw it, the boat, drifting in sideways, bumping gently against the old pier. Paint chipped off, wood waterlogged, oars missing. And sitting at the stern was the body. Male, maybe mid-40s, eyes wide open, mouth slack. No injuries, no blood, but his skin, God. His skin was drained, not just pale, colorless, like the blood had been drawn out one layer at a time. I called it in. Backup arrived. We brought it in and tagged it as a suspicious death. But then came the part that made my stomach turn. Forensics came back 3 days later. The boat, its registration, was still visible beneath a film of moss, was listed under a man named Henry Tolliver. I remembered that name. I was fresh out of the academy the year he went missing. Disappeared in the woods near Mount Katahdin in 1982. No body, no sign of a struggle. His car was found near the trailhead, but nothing else. That was 22 years ago. And this body matched his age now. Not 22 years ago. Now, like he'd been out there this whole time, aging in a place that doesn't follow our rules. That night, I stayed at the ranger's cabin out near Hay Pond. I needed time to think. I went over every report, every image, but I kept coming back to one question. If the boat belonged to a man who vanished decades ago. Where had it been this whole time? The first sound woke me around 2:40 a.m., creaking wood, gentle, repeating, like an old dock swaying in wind. But there was no wind. I got up, looked out the window, nothing, just mist crawling along the treetops and the smell of lake water. Then I heard it again. Creak, creak, followed by something scraping, like oars brushing the sides of an old canoe. But I hadn't brought a boat, and the lake was a half-mile out. So I grabbed the flashlight, walked to the porch, didn't even get my boots on, just bare socks on cold pine. The sound stopped, dead quiet. No bugs, no wind, no birds, just the cold breath of something watching. In the morning, I found wet footprints on the dock, too long for a man. 5 toes, but spaced wide, like whatever left them didn't walk upright. No drag marks, no slide pattern, just step after step, ending at the cabin's front door. I filed the evidence, sent copies to the regional forensic lab. The digital folder corrupted the next day, twice, no recovery. I reprinted the photos. They came out black, just darkness, no detail. That's when I stopped reporting everything, started keeping my own files, the ones no one else gets to see. Because whatever was in that lake, it didn't just take Tolliver, it brought him back. And whatever dragged his body in is still moving under the surface. You ever wonder why some lakes up here are fenced off? No swimming signs posted, even when no one's been injured there? They don't tell the public, but we see the files. Every few years, another empty boat. Another person found drowned with no water in their lungs. Skin gray, teeth clenched, eyes open. If you're still listening, you need to understand something. These stories I'm telling, they aren't campfire tales. They aren't ghost stories. They're the ones we weren't allowed to share. Because if the public knew what was really out there, they'd never go into the woods again. And what's in the woods, it doesn't want to be seen. So if you're the kind of person who thinks the real world is already explained, keep moving. But if you've ever had that feeling that something not quite right followed you back from a hike or stood behind your tent when everything else was quiet, then stick around, because there's more, much more. Subscribe to MindFuel. This is just the first chapter. You're going to want to hear the rest. You learn not to chase every story you hear on patrol. Most are local color, camp legends, whispers at the diner. Half of them start with someone's cousin seeing something in the trees. But there's one story that always circled back. Same stretch of highway, same kind of night, same girl. And every time I tried to ignore it, something new would happen, something quiet, something I couldn't explain. Route 201 runs from the Forks all the way north to Jackman. 2-lane blacktop, no shoulder. Just woods on both sides and an occasional turnout if you're lucky. In fog, it's like driving through a tunnel carved into smoke. No lights, no motion, just silence pressing in from the trees. That's where the stories start. Locals say she's been around since the early 70s, teenage girl, wearing a torn varsity jacket, always barefoot, always standing alone on the side of the road just beyond the fog line, thumbing a ride. But here's the thing. They say she never speaks when she gets in the car. She just stares straight ahead, calm, still. And if you don't look directly at her face, you might not notice what's wrong. I never believed it. Not until the night I picked her up. It was November, early snowfall. I was heading back from Jackman after checking on a call that turned out to be a false alarm, just wind knocking over an old antenna on a hunting shack. It was a long drive, and I was the only one on that road for miles. Then I saw her, out of the fog, standing completely still, one hand raised, thumb out, the other just hanging at her side. She couldn't have been more than 16, My headlights caught her face for a second. She looked calm, not scared, not cold, just waiting, like she knew I'd stop. I pulled over, rolled down the passenger window. "Need a ride?" I asked. She didn't speak, just nodded once and got in. She smelled like wet leaves and old smoke, didn't say where she was headed, didn't look at me. I assumed shock. Runaway. Maybe a party gone wrong. "Cold night to be out like this," I offered. No response. I radioed in, just to be safe. "Dispatch, got a possible juvenile. Picking her up on 201, mile marker 63. Will update when I get details." Static. Then silence. I kept driving. 5 miles down the road, I glanced at her, just quick. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. That's when I noticed her jacket. A faded maroon with a stitched name half torn on the chest. Katie. And her skin. It wasn't pale. It was faded, like an old photo left out in the sun too long. I felt something shift in the air, the way it does right before a thunderclap, when everything gets too quiet. Then suddenly, she was gone. Gone. No sound, no door open, no gust of wind, just an empty seat beside me. I slammed the brakes, got out, looked around with the flashlight. Nothing. No footprints, no sign she'd ever been there. When I got back into the cruiser, the passenger seat was still damp, smelled like pine and river mud, like something that had crawled up from the lake bed, not walked in from the woods. I made it back to the station around midnight. Didn't log the stop, but I checked the dash cam, and what I saw, I still don't understand it. The footage showed her the whole time, never blinking, staring ahead. But in the last 10 seconds, just before she vanished, she turned to face the camera directly and smiled. Not wide, not warm, just knowing, like she'd seen something in me. The next morning, I went down to a little general store off the 201 near Rockwood. Old guy behind the counter had been there for decades. I didn't say much, just asked if anyone around here talked about the girl on the highway. He paused, looked me dead in the eyes. "You talked to her?" he said. I didn't answer. He nodded, almost sad. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Then she knows your name now." I didn't understand it then. But over the next few weeks, I started getting calls. Dead calls. Receiver would click, silence on the other end. Then a voice, low, faint, always the same phrase. "Can you come pick me up?" That's when I started sleeping with the porch light off. Started driving with my dash cam unplugged, because every time I looked at the footage, even the old files, she was there. Somewhere. Reflection in the mirror, sitting in the back seat, standing at the edge of the road as I passed. I searched for old reports, no official files, but I found a page torn from a 1981 State Patrol log. November 6th, subject ID'd as Kathleen Marin, age 17, reported missing after homecoming dance. Last seen wearing maroon jacket. Route 201 near mile marker 63. It matched the jacket, matched the face, everything, but the case was marked as closed. Reason: unfounded report. Victim recovered, except the signature at the bottom didn't match any name on file, and there was a second note scribbled in the margin. Returned 3 times since, each time older, each time quieter. There are things on these, roads that don't belong to time the way we do, and if you're unlucky enough to speak with one, they remember you. They don't forget. So if you're ever driving down Route 201 on a foggy night, and you see a girl in a jacket with a stitched name faded across the chest, don't stop. Don't look. And whatever you do, don't ask her where she's going, because if she gets in, you won't be the one behind the wheel anymore. I've got more files, more nights I wish I could forget, but I'm telling them here. So, You know what we were never allowed to say out loud. Subscribe to MindFuel. These cases weren't supposed to see daylight, but I kept the tapes, and chapter by chapter, you'll hear the truth. Next time, I'll tell you about the one case that never left the station walls, the one they said didn't exist, even though I still have the photos. You'll want to hear that one. And if you've already heard her voice, keep the lights off. She doesn't like to be seen twice. Some calls you remember because they shook your foundation, others because they never left. This one, I think about it every time I hear the wind stop mid-breath. Jackman sits right on the edge of the timberlands near the Quebec border, dense forest that eats radio signals and spits out strange rumors. Even the veteran trackers avoid it after dark. There are no clear trails out there, just miles of green that twist around themselves until you forget which direction you came in from. It's a place you don't stumble into. You have to follow something to find it. We were called out after a hunter, local, reliable, known to the department, radioed in from the south sector of Timberline Road. His voice was flat, no panic, just confused. Said he found something strange, wouldn't explain over the air. Just send someone, he said. You'll see what I mean. It was early November, right before first snow. I headed out with Officer Kane. New to the area, but sharp. We parked at the service gate and hiked 3 miles in. No animals, no sound. Even our footsteps felt wrong, like the ground was soft in places where it shouldn't be. And then we found it. A clearing, maybe 20 feet wide. No tracks, no broken brush around it. Just open space in the middle of a pine maze. At the center, a perfect spiral. Dead animals, foxes, squirrels, birds, all laid out in a winding pattern that curled tighter the closer it got to the middle. None of them torn open, none of them showing signs of trauma. They looked placed, as if something set them there deliberately, one by one. I remember Kane stepping forward, raising his phone to get a photo. The moment he crossed the edge of the spiral, every single electronic device we had glitched. My radio shrieked and went dead. Kane's GPS screen started spinning, and my body cam. It caught something. At the edge of the footage, just behind Kane's right shoulder, there's a movement. Not fast, not running, just moving. A tall, upright shape, 2 legs, long arms, stepping between trees where the light didn't reach. But the camera can't hold it. The shape wobbles, like a bad signal on an old VHS tape. You see it, then it flickers, then it's gone. I didn't see it in the moment, but Kane did. He stopped cold, stared toward the tree line. "Did you hear that?" he asked. I didn't hear anything, because there was nothing to hear. No birds, no wind. Even our breath sounded dampened, like we'd stepped into a soundproofed tunnel made of trees. I called his name again. No response. He kept staring. I moved closer, touched his arm. That's when he blinked, once, then turned to me and opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the next 3 days, Kane didn't speak. Not once. Doctors said there was no trauma, no stroke, no neurological signs of damage. But he wouldn't talk, wouldn't look at lights, wouldn't go near windows, just stared at the floor with that same expression he had when we found the spiral. I reviewed the body cam footage later, tried to pause it at the exact frame the shape appeared. Each time I stopped it, the software froze, restarted. After 5 attempts, the file corrupted completely. Gone. But the audio survived. And on the raw track, just after Kane goes quiet, you can hear something faint. Not a growl, not a voice. It's like whispering layered over itself. 12 voices speaking at once, all slightly out of sync. Only one word is clear, right at the end. It says, "Stay." The clearing was never found again. We tried. God knows we tried. Same trail, same entry point, but no spiral, no dead animals, just miles of identical trees and a sense that we were walking in circles. Kane came back to work, eventually. Quiet. Different. He still won't go near Jackman, won't talk about that day. But sometimes during briefing, I catch him watching the window like something's waiting just beyond it. He says nothing, just listens. These woods, they don't forget. They don't forgive either. What we stepped into, that wasn't a clearing. It was a place meant to be found once, and we were not supposed to see it. You start to realize it's not just that bad things happen in the Maine wilderness. It's that some things are waiting for the right person to find them. And when you do, they mark you. I've got more. Cases no one logged, tapes no one kept. And if you're hearing this, if you felt that moment when the woods go still and you're no longer sure you're alone, then you're already on the list. Subscribe to MindFuel. Because the deeper you go into these files, the harder it becomes to pretend the world is what you thought it was. Next up, a voice over the police scanner that shouldn't have been there. A voice from a man declared dead 3 years earlier. And the message he left still makes the lights flicker in our old evidence room. You won't want to miss that. We don't get a lot of missing hunter cases in the early season. By late October, most of them know the land. Locals, family-run trips, experienced trackers. They check in, they check out. But when we do get a call, it usually means something went wrong, or someone didn't come back who was supposed to. That's how this one started. 3 men, brothers and their uncle, all from Old Town. They went out toward Moosehead Lake. Not deep country, not like Jackman, but still far enough that once you're off the road, it's you and the trees. They left a voicemail with a friend around 3:12 p.m., said they were hunkering down early because of a storm. They'd found a lodge just west of the ridge, said it was a lucky break. Fully stocked, the younger one laughed. Like someone left in a hurry and forgot to come back. The problem? There's no lodge on the western ridge of Moosehead. There hasn't been one since the old trapper cabin burned down in the 40s. We got the call 2 days later when none of them returned. Their truck was still parked at the trailhead, untouched. Cabin keys on the dash, cooler still full. We sent a 2-man team up the trail. I went in with them. Riker, retired or not. I don't stay home when things start to feel wrong. And this already felt wrong. Fog rolled in as we hit the ridgeline. Not normal fog. Thick, still. Didn't swirl when we walked through it. It just parted around us. Like we weren't supposed to see what was ahead. And then we did. The lodge. It shouldn't have been there. 3 stories tall, dark wood, black shingles, porch sagging at the edges. Looked old. Older than anything, still standing out there. But intact. Not a ruin. Not a cabin. A lodge. Fully built. Fully furnished. The front door opened when we knocked. No lock, no dust, just silence. The inside. It was like someone stopped time. Dining table set for 8. Plates still there, one with what looked like dried meat jerky molded to porcelain. Fireplace full of half-burned logs. No soot. And there was a smell. Not rot. Not mildew. It was sweet. Like flowers left in a sealed room for too long. We split up. I took the upper floors. The others stayed on the ground level. Room after room. Each one had signs of life frozen in place. A coat draped over a chair. A pipe left next to a lantern. A record player with no dust, but no footprints. No fingerprints. No sign anyone had entered in years. Except for the hunters' packs, leaning near the back door. We found 2 of them that evening. Alive. Shaken. Said they'd been stuck inside for a night and a day. Only, the weather reports showed clear skies, no storm, no fog, and they'd been missing for 2 full nights. When we asked them what happened inside, neither gave a straight answer. They said, there were rooms that weren't always there. And one of them whispered, it talked to him. It let us go, but it wanted him. The third man, the uncle, wasn't found with them. We searched until the fog pulled back near morning. Nothing. No blood, no drag marks. Just an empty coat on the lodge's 2nd floor. We sealed the area, marked the lodge's GPS. 2 days later, when the search team went back, there was nothing there. No structure, no porch, just open woods. But here's where it gets worse. 3 weeks after the search closed, a call came in from a ranger working 30 miles north of that site. He'd found a man collapsed on the trail, naked, incoherent. Skin looked leathery, teeth cracked, hair gone. They brought him in, assumed exposure or mental break. He had no ID, but his fingerprints matched. It was the uncle, same man, same age, except now. He looked 80. His driver's license photo was from 5 months earlier. His body had aged 5 decades. Medical couldn't explain it. They said it had to be staged, said it was impossible. He wouldn't speak, wouldn't make eye contact. But one nurse caught him whispering when he thought no one was listening. She swears he said, the lodge doesn't sleep, it waits, and it showed me what it keeps underground. They tried to sedate him. He died that night, heart failure. But the security footage from his hospital room? 5 minutes before he flatlined. The audio recorded a door creaking open. No door moved, but the sound is there, plain as day. Then, the whisper again. It's still open. We tried to go back. We followed the original GPS route. Nothing. Even the coordinates had shifted by 3 degrees, like the forest moved it. And the 2 survivors? Gone off grid, phones off. One moved out west, the other refused further interviews. All they said before they left was, if you ever see a place in the woods that looks too good to be there, don't go inside, even if it opens the door for you. Places like that lodge, they aren't built. They're called up. Like memories buried too deep for the land to forget. And once you go in, you leave something behind, something time won't give back. These stories are real. We were there. We saw what no one was supposed to. Subscribe to MindFuel, because you've just stepped into Chapter 4, and the forest isn't done with us yet. Next, there's a missing town, one that was never supposed to be found again. Until we heard the music playing from under the earth. And I'll tell you what was buried alive. You'll want to be ready for that. The strangest case I ever worked didn't come from a call. There was no body, no scream in the night, no frantic 911 dispatcher trying to piece together panic over a bad signal. It began with a man calmly walking into our station at 6:17 in the morning. Quiet, neat, like he just stepped out of church, and he said, I killed a man. His name was George Talcott. I buried him with a hammer in his skull behind the mill off County Line Road in Northfield. Here's the problem. Northfield doesn't have a mill. It never has. Not in the last 50 years. And there's no record of a George Talcott in any missing persons, criminal reports, or living census data. Not in Maine, not in New England, not anywhere. But this man, who identified himself as Carter Hill, age 38, from Bar Harbor, was shaking. Not confused, not drunk. He was certain. He sat in the interview room for hours, pacing, folding and unfolding a piece of paper from his coat. We didn't push him hard, not yet. We needed facts. I asked him when the murder happened. He blinked. August 12th, he said. 1971. I paused. You weren't alive in 1971, I told him. He didn't argue, just looked up at me and said, not as me. What followed was the most surreal interview I've ever recorded. Carter described his childhood in vivid detail, a small town in northern Maine called Whitlock. He knew street names, storefronts, the radio jingle of a diner that used to play ads for fried corn pie with lemon sugar, even the layout of the elementary school, gray floors, 4 stairwells, a janitor named Ellis, who only had 3 fingers. There's just one problem. Whitlock doesn't exist. There's no town by that name anywhere in the state. No old post records, no foundation listings, nothing. Like it was wiped from the map. Carter insisted he wasn't insane. Said he'd lived that childhood. Had friends there. He even gave names. I checked. Some were dead. But one caught my eye. Daniel Wexley, deceased. Died in a house fire in 1968. 3 years before Carter said he played baseball with him in 5th grade. We kept him for a psych eval. He didn't resist, but he kept drawing. Over and over, Carter sketched the same image. A cul-de-sac with 7 homes, a crooked telephone pole, a man standing on the hill. Always the same man, tall, too thin, face turned away, but the detail he kept repeating. The man was always watching the children, never moving, never blinking, just waiting. I was still sorting the paperwork when they called me back in. Carter was gone. He'd taken a pencil and punctured his neck just under the chin. Clean, precise, right through the artery. No note. But when we opened the locker where his personal effects had been stored, we found a folded Polaroid tucked into his coat lining. I'll never forget what it showed. 5 children standing in a dirt field. Color washed out, corners browned with age. They were smiling. One of them was Carter, recognizable, even as a child. The others? We ran the faces through our system out of habit. 2 matched records of children reported missing in 1964. Another matched a girl killed in a farming accident in 1969. The last one came up blank. But behind them, way in the background, blurry, almost out of frame, was a figure. A man on a ridge. Thin, leaning slightly. No face visible. Just a silhouette, arms slack at the sides, like he was waiting for the camera to go away. I went back through everything Carter said. His words, the drawings, the jingle he hummed under his breath. I searched for anything on Whitlock. No maps, no archives. But, in a microfilm database in Augusta, buried in an old utilities record, I found a survey note from 1958. 1 line. Area cleared. Whitlock, Township 17. Full evacuation recommended. No return. That's it. No incident number, no explanation. Just 3 stamped words below the memo. Compartment closed. They never teach you how to explain things that aren't supposed to exist. How to report a murder when the victim never lived. How to handle a photo that proves someone grew up in a town that isn't on Earth anymore. And yet, Carter remembered. Vividly, clearly, painfully. You want to know the part that still keeps me up? I checked my own case files. One of the missing kids from the Polaroid, Ben Withers, he was listed as an active cold case in our own system. But someone updated the file the morning after Carter died. It now reads, reclaimed. No one in the department admits to changing it. Some towns die. Others are taken, wiped clean like chalk from a blackboard. Only fragments left in the minds of people who don't belong to themselves anymore. If Carter wasn't who he thought he was, then who remembered those lives? And why show them to him now? We keep the Polaroid in the off-record drawer, unlabeled, no barcode, just pinned to the corkboard behind my desk. I keep it there to remind myself. If you remember something that no one else does, it might not mean you're wrong. It might mean you're next. There's more files they told us to forget, more names they tried to erase, But I kept them, and I'm telling them now, because someone out there still remembers, and they're waiting for us to piece it together. Subscribe to MindFuel. If you've ever woken up with a memory that doesn't fit your life, a town you swore you visited but can't find on any map, you're not crazy. You're just remembering what they missed. Next time, we'll talk about the mine collapse that never happened, and the men who were still screaming inside it 10 years later. You'll want to hear that one. There's a moment on night shift when everything settles. Calls die down. The static on the radio becomes its own kind of silence. And if you're not careful, you start thinking the world finally calmed down. That's when it comes. Not the scream, not the bang, not the flashing lights, just a click, a ring, a quiet that leans in. The first call came in around 2:03 a.m. Dispatch flagged it as a silent line. No background noise, no hang-up, just an open channel. A second came 3 minutes later, then another. 12 total, spaced out over the next 90 minutes, all traced back to the same number. A payphone registered to a rest stop outside Pittston, rural route, long since overgrown. But here's the part that didn't make sense. That phone was torn down in 2009. I remember it. I was there the night it got pulled. It was rusted out, birds nesting in the coin return, no signal, just a hunk of steel left to rot. And yet, the calls kept coming. I drove out alone just after dawn, took the turnoff onto the old highway spur, cracked pavement swallowed by birch and alder. Thick underbrush reached up through the gaps like the road was bleeding its own roots. It took me 30 minutes just to find the concrete pad, but I knew the spot. I'd stood there 15 years ago, and what I saw? The payphone was back. Not just debris, not broken, standing, mounted upright. Receiver hanging slightly crooked, glass panel fogged, metal still scratched in the same place I remembered carving a case number with my key. Still there. But it didn't look abandoned. It looked used. And when I reached out, the metal was warm. Not sun-warmed, body-warm. I lifted the receiver. It clicked. No dial tone, but a faint hum. I don't know what possessed me, but I spoke into it. Pittston Dispatch, do you read? Nothing. Then breathing. Faint. Steady. Like someone had been waiting the whole time, quiet just long enough for me to speak first. I asked again. Still no words. But this time, the static pulsed, like someone was tapping their finger near the mic. 2 taps. Silence. 3 taps. Then, the click of a coin being dropped. The call disconnected. I called back to Central to log the visit, gave them the call timestamp. Dispatcher pulled the log and said, "That's weird. There's a matching file, but it's old." She transferred me to archives. The man there asked me to repeat the number. I did. Silence. Then, "That's not from this year." I asked what he meant. He said, "That's a hardline number. It was logged. Once." August 18th, 1974. He sent me the scan. It was a typed transcript, an emergency call logged by the state police nearly 50 years ago. The report was marked, "Call received from Pittston Rest Stop payphone, 2:03 a.m. Subject unknown." Message content. Male voice whispering, "It's here again. I can't keep it from remembering. Tell them to bury the name." That exact number. Same timestamp, same dead air. Except that voice from 1974. It wasn't listed as the caller. It was listed as the dispatcher. I played the tape from the station archive. The voice was familiar. Slow, measured. It sounded like me. But I wasn't alive in 1974. I asked the records tech if there had ever been a crosswire, a reroute, some kind of mislabeling. He said no, The call log was analog, stamped in ink, a closed case. No officer ever responded to that location in '74, but here I was, standing at the exact coordinates. I tried one more thing, checked the interior panel of the phone. It was cracked open slightly. Inside, tucked behind the fuse box, was a folded slip of paper, old, curled with age. It read, "Second call scheduled, 2:03 a.m., August 18th, every year. Must be answered, must not be logged." There were initials at the bottom. I recognized them. They matched the name of the officer who trained me in 2003. He died of a stroke 5 years ago. I never knew he worked Pittston. But now I wonder, how many times he drove out here alone? How many of us have? I brought the paper back, filed it in my drawer under Unsolved Anomalous, right next to the Polaroid from Carter Hill's case. The next night, the phone rang again, this time at my home. No number on the screen, just static, and a voice I couldn't place. Familiar, but wrong. It said, "You heard it. Now you remember. We keep calling until the line is answered by the right voice." Then it went dead. You ever wonder why some payphones stay warm, long after the wiring's pulled? Why some numbers still ring in the system even though the structure's been gone for years? Because not all calls are coming from the past. Some are coming from places that loop, places where time remembers you, even if you've forgotten it. There's more coming, more signals, more voices, and if you've made it this far, you're hearing what we were never allowed to repeat. The cases they told us were resolved. The names they made us forget. Subscribe to MindFuel. Because some calls don't stop, even after you hang up. And the next one, it's already ringing, from a mine shaft collapsed in 1922 that never stayed closed. I tried to stop, tried to leave those reports buried, let the darkness stay where it belongs. But the files kept showing up, cases that were never filed. Witnesses who shouldn't remember, and questions that didn't just haunt me. They followed me. The deeper I went, the more I realized this wasn't about what I saw, it was about what was watching back. You've heard the first 7 cases, but those were just the ones that left scars. The ones that come next, they left bodies, and some of them still haven't stopped moving. If you think you can handle what's still locked in the evidence room, click through to Volume 2, and whatever you do, don't listen too closely. Because some of these voices, remember who listened last time.